always have mixed emotions when it's time to put our roses to bed at the end of fall. I miss the spent blooms. Oh, it's so windy today. But I know that this step is very important in order to make sure that our roses are healthy, they overwinter very well, and they will produce beautiful blooms to delight us next spring. I was trying to do one big video on winterization of roses, but it's just too much information to put in one video. So I decided to break it in separate videos, and each video would be dedicated how to winterize a different type of rose in our garden. This video would be dedicated to a weakened rose. Rose which is weakened by disease, defoliation, drought conditions, rose which is stressed because of critters and whatnot. I have one rose in my garden like that, and I will be showing you how to do proper winterization of that rose in mine zone 7, and possibly for people who have such conditions who live in colder climates. We garden in different conditions, in different climates, and there is one important factor which everybody should follow no matter where we garden, is our agricultural zone. We can't really go around and kind of trick our way through that rule. Everything depends on where we live and which conditions we grow our roses. Again, I garden in zone 7, coastal Connecticut. And because I am near the big mass of water, the sharp fluctuations in temperature is less noticeable and less severe than area inland. So that is a valuable thing for us, since roses suffer the most from this sowing, freezing conditions in the middle of this harsh winter and harsh winds. So here I have a rose which is compromised. My fault, partially my fault, partially because of critters, because of rabbits. So the name of the rose is Brother Get File, and it's a very hardy rose. That's another advice to people who are shopping for roses and who really don't want to turn their garden into this tchotchkerized place with all sorts of wrappings and plastic protections and blankets and whatnots. Go for roses which are hardier than your zone. For example, if I live in zone 6-7, I choose roses which are hardier to zone 5. This way I know that those roses are tough, they're tough survivors, they're going to go into winter, and I don't need to sit on my sofa at home and think all winter, is my rose coming back in spring or not? I know the rose is tough. This particular rose which I bought, Brother Cat File, is good to zone 4, which is a great thing, because I'm gardening in zone 7, and I can rest assured that everything is fine with my rose. But because that rose is weakened, I have to make sure that I do extra protection to make sure that that rose will survive and will be growing again next spring. So come with me and I will show you where this rose is growing and what's going on with that poor baby. So the main rule for winterization, successful winterization of a rose, would be to make sure that the root ball of the rose is well protected. I would recommend people gardening in zone 7, people who buy grafted roses should bury the graft union underneath the soil, and people who live and garden in zones 6 and 5, definitely deeper, this amount under the soil level. This way you make sure that your rose is well protected under the layer of soil. Now, I always put my grafted roses way down, probably this amount, under the soil level. This way I know that my roses are doing fine. The only negative thing may be that in case my grafted rose decides to do a wild shoot from the root system, I really wouldn't know and I would need to check it. But that's minor thing. As long as my roses are coming out of winter very healthy and happy. So here we go, this baby rose. What happened to it? Well, my fault, I planted it in the wrong place. Our maple tree is constantly expanding. Of course, trees love to grow bigger, and me not thinking that this is going to happen to this area. So last year this area was sunny, this year it is not. And unfortunately in spring I planted this rose, it wasn't growing very well, and then it was attacked by rabbits. And rabbits totally ate it to the, you see these sticks coming up, everything was just eaten. And I thought, okay, this rose, I better pay attention to this rose, otherwise this rose is done. After that big attack, rose went into dormancy for good months. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm not going to do anything about you, baby rose, because I know you have enough of strength in you to push another fresh leaves this year. And that's exactly what happened. At the end of September, this rose woke up when it doesn't need to wake up, and it started to create new leaves, as you can see, and it actually is creating a rose which is unheard of in the middle of November. You're not supposed to be creating new beautiful lush leaves which are totally not ready for punishing winds which should be approaching soon. The rule is we start to winterize our rose after the big strong freeze comes to our area. And of course people who garden in warmer climates, in zone 8 and higher, don't need to deal with freezing conditions and winterizing their roses. But people who live in zone 7, 6, 5 and lower need to winterize their roses. And how we do it, we wait for the big freeze to come. That's why I'm not showing you right away how I'm doing it, because we never had our freeze. And by big freeze I mean temperature in mid-20s going through the night for 2 nights. That's a big freeze. We're not talking about light dew freezing in the morning, lightly just touching the top of the leaves. No, we are talking about deep, solid 25 degrees Fahrenheit temperature, and that's the time when we start winterizing our roses. Hence, I'm not showing you how I do it because I cannot do it. My rose is not ready for it yet. The temperature here, look at me, I'm with short sleeves, and I'm desperately waiting for this winterization process to begin. So, I want you to know that when you garden in your gardens, even in small gardens, I have different climate conditions. Just look at this floss flower here. You see, this floss flower is being well protected here in this area by all sorts of shrubberies from all corners, and you can see that nothing is damaged by light frosts we had recently. But when you look at another side of my garden, let me take you here with the camera and show you. You will see this floss flower on another side, which is not protected. You see the garden is open here. So this floss flower was really damaged by the wind, by the cold freezing conditions. You see? So even in my small garden, microclimates are very important to pay attention to. Okay, back to my rose. Let me get here for camera to see me. So what I'm going to do with this rose, for this rose to survive winter and come back happily next spring, and by the way, next spring I'm going to move this rose, because this is not a place for this beauty. I have this chicken wire here. I'm going to put it around, I'm going to take this little thing which didn't do a good job here, this wire, and I will make a nice big round chicken wire loop here around this rose. And what I like to do, which not many people do, but I like to do that, I'm going to put around 2 inches of good composted manure, well composted manure around the root ball of the rose. I like to do that because next year that compost will work its way out into the soil. I'm not going to take it off, and the natural bacteria will be introduced to the soil, and that will enhance the health of my rose. On top of that 2 layers of compost, I probably will do some sort of a mulch. I can use bark mulch or leaf mulch, and then, because chicken wire will be all over here, I'm going to stuff it with leaves. Now I have a lot of happy maple leaves, which are not really very good for stuffing the cages around the plants, because they have a tendency to stick together and form these slimy masses, which are not good for roses. So I have mulberry tree growing on another side right there, so I will be using those leaves. The best leaves for this purpose would be oak leaves. I don't have them, I don't have an oak leaf, so I will be using the mulberry leaves. And I probably will mix these leaves too. That's what will happen. I will stuff it around really well, really high. Make sure that the rose is well secure and the stems are not going to move with this rose. So that's a plan for this one. Again, if you have such situation in your garden, make sure that you do extra protections for your area, for your rose to be able to survive and come back next year. And then if you have to move this rose, you can move it successfully. Now in colder climates, people use all sorts of extra contraptions. They do plastic buckets with holes, make sure that they have holes in, and there are a lot of choices on the internet. Some people cover their roses with blankets. People really go a long way to create beautiful roses in their gardens. But I'm a little bit weary of blankets because all sorts of critters love to have a little warm place there, and they can really damage your rose under those blankets in winter. So people put baits inside. Oh gosh, I don't even want to go there. I don't like that situation. But here in Zone 7, I'm blessed with good weather and not very severe winter where I don't need to do those severe situations to protect the rose. Again, this method of caging your rose and stuffing the cage with leaves would be good for people who live in Zone 6. People who live in Zone 5, I would recommend to put a big heap of soil on your rose, around the root ball of your rose, and I mean something like this. Don't dig it from around the rose, take it somewhere from another side of your garden and put this big foot-high hill of soil around your rose. This way your rose is going into winter well protected. But that's for somebody who is living in Zone 5 and the weather conditions are really harsh in those territories. And I really compliment those gardeners who are really trying hard to preserve beautiful roses in their gardens. Okay, so this is it, this video about how to winterize the weekend and compromised rose. Next time I would be talking about winterization of climbing roses. I want everybody to have beautiful gardens, spend wonderful times in their gardens, no matter how big and small they are. So thank you for subscribing to my channel. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time during my next garden adventures.